So make sure every day, I tell you this all the time, I'm going to keep telling you, make sure you have the section number, the title, and the objective, because all of those will be on that notebook quiz on Thursday. We have actually 11 days of notes that are going to be on this notebook quiz. I'll list them up on the board probably Wednesday, so you can start to get those in order for that notebook quiz on Thursday. But that is what's coming up this week. Any questions before we get moving? All right. You need to write all of this down. These are our keywords for today, so I'll give you some time to write. You can't really tell what's in bold, but this is in bold. Median of a triangle, centroid of a triangle, and then this theorem. So get this all in your notes. It'll probably take about 2 or 3 minutes to write, and then we'll do a little discussing. Alright, so median of a triangle is a segment from a vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. So on the next slide we'll look at some examples of what a median is, but the important things to remember is the median starts at the vertex and then it goes to the opposite midpoint. Now each triangle we're going to look at actually will have 3 medians. All those medians meet at one point. That point is called the centroid of the triangle. We are going to spend a lot of time on Wednesday finding centroids. Centroids, it's actually kind of a cool idea. It's the center of mass of a triangle. So if you can find the centroid, that's actually the point where you can balance the triangle on your finger. So that's what we're going to practice on Wednesday. Kind of fun. At least if you're a big math nerd like me. And then the last thing we're going to look at today is a theorem. It's called Theorem 4.9. It's the intersection of the medians. Again, we just talked about how the intersection of the medians is also called the centroid. But the place where the medians intersect, it actually cuts the median into kind of some cool things. 2/3 the distance from the vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side always occurs when you're looking at the median. So I'm going to give you some formulas to help you remember that. If you take the whole thing and you multiply it by 2/3, that'll give you the longer segment. And I want you to write this in your notes. This is all part of that Theorem 4.9. Or if you want to find the smaller segment, you would do 1/3 times the whole median. That would give you the shorter segment. So we're going to look at a few different ways to find those lengths. Sometimes it's easier just to do it in your head, just kind of reason through it. Sometimes it's easier to write out an equation, so we will look at both options. But again, once you look at those medians, the place where they intersect is always 2/3 the distance from the vertex to the midpoint of the other side.
Which one is for longer?
Both of those. This is the one we use more often. We're usually looking for the longer segment. So if you have the whole thing, 2/3 of it will give you the longer segment, and then the other 1/3 would give you the shorter segment. And then the shorter and the longer add up to give you the whole thing. So if you can remember the 2/3 part, that'll make it a lot easier on you. So I tried to put all the vocab words and the theorems and everything on one slide, so the rest of the slides that we look at you don't really need to write in your notes. They're just kind of a little bit more background information. So if you have all this, you should be good to go for a little bit. Any questions? Alright, again, don't need to write this down. You already have all of this information in writing from the last slide, but these are some examples of what the median looks like. So again, it starts at the vertex, and it goes to the midpoint of the opposite side. Remember, we learned about midpoints in chapter 2, I believe it was. The midpoint cuts the larger segment into 2 equal smaller segments. So these are both congruent from the midpoint to the other side, or from the vertex to the midpoint. That gives you the median. Any vertex can have a median. So if you start at the top, go down here, or if you want to start down in the bottom left vertex, you would go over here. Or sorry, that's bottom right. This is bottom left. And then over there. And then these two are congruent, these two are congruent, and these two are congruent because it always goes to the midpoint. Any questions?
Right there, right?
You do not need to write any of this. This is all just a little knowledge for you. All right, again, you don't need to write the bottom one. We'll look at plenty of examples that you can write in your notes. But I want to start at A, and I want to draw a median. So start at A. The median would go to the middle of the opposite side. So the thing that I just drew is the median. Now, if this entire segment CB is 14, and I just dropped a median, what would each of these be? The whole thing's 14. Each side would be half of 14. 7. So when you're drawing the median on your homework, I always want you to label how long the two segments would be on either side of the median that we drew. Any questions on what a median is? Starts at a vertex, goes to the midpoint of the opposite side. Questions? All right, here are the first 4 that I want you to have in your notes. We're doing exactly what I just did on the bottom of the last slide. We are just drawing a median starting at the vertex A to the opposite side. So I'll give you a second to get these all drawn in, and then we'll add the medians to each picture. Alright, so we want to start at A, so put your pencils up on A, and then you want to draw a line from A to the middle of the opposite side, so you can just sort of eyeball it. Starting at A, and then we're cutting that side that has the 26 into 2 equal parts. How long would each of the equal parts be if the entire thing is 26? What's half of 26? 13. So this side would be 13 and this side would be 13. Good. So what I just drew in red, that's the median from A to the opposite side. Alright, we can do the same thing on number 2. So you're going to put your pencil on A and then just go across the triangle to the opposite side. I would suggest you use something straight like the side of a note card or the side of a warm-up sheet or the side of your ID. Make sure these are straight, nice, and neat, a little neater than mine. Alright, if that entire side is 6, how long is each segment after we slice it? Good. 3 and 3. Alright, number 3, again we're going to start at A. We're going to cut that other side in half. So how long would each of those be? 5 and 5. Great. And the last one on this slide, start at A, slice. How long would they each be? 10 and 10. Very, very good. Any questions on drawing a median? Yep, the answer is just the diagram. Yep, drawing a median and then labeling how long each segment would be. Any questions? Okay, you don't need to write any of this. Remember, this should look familiar. This is Theorem 4.9. I had you write it all at the beginning instead of writing throughout the lesson, so you all should have all of this already. But here is just an example of what it looks like when all the medians are drawn. This point in the center of the triangle where all those medians touch, that is called the centroid. Again, we talked about how that's the center of mass. So if I cut this triangle out and I put my finger on P, the triangle would balance perfectly on my finger. Alright? Another cool thing is the way that it slices each of those medians. Let's look at, which one are they talking about? So the median AD, AP is 2/3 the length of the whole thing. And then this little guy is 1/3 the length of the whole thing. So that's kind of a cool thing also that happens when we're talking about the centroid of the triangle. But again, you should already have all of this in writing. We added a little bit under the information in that first slide as well. Any questions before we look at some examples? Alright, here is the first example. You don't need to write it down. It's actually already written down for you. So in this example, you can see that they tell you the entire length of this median is 18. And then they're asking for the two smaller segments. Well, this larger segment, KP, is just 2/3 times 18, because 18 is the entire length, so that would be 12. And then if the whole thing's 18 and this one's 12, you can figure out pretty quickly that that little one is 6. So that's what we're going to do today. Here are the ones that I actually want you to write. You don't need to write the directions above 5. It'll be pretty clear what we're doing once we get going. But you should write everything below that green line, including the directions for each one. So I give you some time to do that. We'll look at these 3, and then we have 3 more, and then you'll be good to go on your homework. So very exciting lesson for a rainy Monday. Alright, so let's look at exactly what they give us. So on number 5, they are giving us the length of AD. So they're giving us the entire median. Alright, and they're saying, well, that's 60. They want me to find AP and PD. AP is the longer part. We learned earlier in today's lesson that the longer part is 2/3 the entire thing, or 2/3 times the whole. The shorter part is the rest of it, so 1/3 times the whole. This would be a great time to get a calculator out. Do you all know how to enter 2/3 in the calculator? There's an ABC button. It's above the 7. So you'd hit 2, the ABC button 3 times 60 equals, and that'll give you the length of AP. If you don't have a calculator, go grab one.
40.
40. Good. What's 1/3 times 60? 20. Good. You'll also notice that the longer one is twice as big as the smaller one, because 2/3 is twice as big as 1/3, and that they add together to give you the length of the whole thing. So I said sometimes it's easier to set up the equation and do it mathematically. Sometimes you can just sort of reason through it. Okay, if this one is 40 and this one is half of that, it must be 20. Or you can think, well, the whole thing's 60, this one's 40, so that leaves me with 20 left over. So there's multiple ways to think through these. As long as you're getting the right answer, I don't really care what your reasoning strategy is. Any questions on number 5? Number 6 is the same thing. They are giving us this whole length of the median. That is 36 units. They're asking us to find HP, which looks like the smaller segment, and PG, which looks like the longer segment. You can tell because the longer segment is the one that touches the vertex. The shorter one is the one that touches the midpoint. Alright, so how do I find the shorter one? One-third or 2/3? The shorter one is 1/3. So 1/3 times the whole thing will give you the shorter one. 2/3 times the whole thing will give you the longer one. And then they should add together to give you 36 if you want to check your work. So it's the shorter guy. 12. Now you can either think 12 times 2 to get the longer one, or you can think 36 minus 12 to give you the longer one, or you can think 2/3 times 32 to give you the longer one. Again, lots of ways to reason through this. But what is the longer segment? 24. Wonderful. Questions? Alright, let's look at the last one. Again, they're giving us this entire length of the median. They're saying that that is 99 units. We're asked to find KP. That's touching the vertex, so that's going to be the longer one. And PM, that's touching the midpoint, so that's going to be our shorter one. How can I find either of these? Two-thirds times what? 99. That'll give you the longer one. 1/3 times 99 will give you the shorter one. Alright, anyone have those? What's 2/3 times 99? 66. Good. So then the other one is 33. Very good. What are your questions? Alright, so now we have to be a little more careful to see what they gave us and what they're actually asking for. So in this first one, number 8, they give us PB. So that's the longer segment. And they're asking us to find the whole thing. Alright, I'm going to call the whole thing W for whole thing. Alright, I know that 2/3 times the whole thing should give me the longer part. The longer part in this case is 8. We'll get to that in 1 second. I'm going to put your comment on pause. Do you guys know how to get W by itself when it's being multiplied by 2/3? This is like a throwback to algebra. You multiply both sides by the reciprocal. Do you remember doing that? So on the left side you just have W. On the right side you need to do 8 times 3/2. Can anyone do that and tell me what they get? 12. So that is the algebraic way to find the entire length of the median when you're given the longer segment. Now, a minute ago I heard someone yell 4. What does 4 represent?
The other side, D and P.
DP. We talked about how the shorter segment is half the length of the longer segment. So if you know that this one's 8 and this one's 4, what's the whole thing? What's 8 and 4 when you add them together? 12. So if you want to just reason through and label the diagram to get the entire length, I am fine with that. If you want to set up the equation, I am also fine with that. Questions on either method? Either way, you should get that the whole thing is 12.
So I just put 4 on the other side and
Just add them together. Yep. So like if this one's 2, this is the longer of these segments. What's the shorter of these segments? What's half of 2? 1. And what do you get when you add 2 and 1 together? 3. So the entire thing, EH, would be 3. Or you can set up this equation. Would anyone like to see me set up the equation? Alright, so over here they give me the longer segment. The longer segment is 24, so how long is the shorter segment? 12. And then what do you get when you add them together? 36. So the entire segment is 36. Alright, or again, you could set up that equation if you want. 2/3 times the whole thing gives you that longer part. Or if they give you the shorter part, you'd have to do 1/3 times the whole thing is the shorter part. Any questions? Alright, let's look through this homework. So this is worksheet 4.6. Number 1 says identify the medians of that triangle. So any segment that goes from a vertex to the midpoint of the opposite side. Anyone see one of them?
No.
F to what? FC. Good. B to what? E. Good. And there's one more. A, D. Very good. Number 2 says, what's the centroid? Remember, the centroid is where all those segments meet. G. Point G. Good. Alright, that's the first 2. Now I just want to look at one from each section. So you have a triangle that looks like this. We are told that that segment, DG, is 5. We're looking for GF. So if one side's 5, what's the other side? 5. Remember, because G would be the midpoint. So that's 5. Good. So your answer for number 3 is 5. Alright, number 5, they give you the entire length of the median, right? They tell you that it's 12. Then they ask you to find CQ and QD. CQ looks like the larger segment because it's the one touching the vertex. So what do I need to multiply 12 by? What's the magic fraction? Do we need to go back through our notes? Number 5, yep. The longer one is CQ. Yep, 2/3 times 12 would give me CQ. 1/3 times 12 will give me QD. Anyone know either of those? 8. And 4 is the second one. Good. So that's how you're going to do that section. 5, 6, 7. It looks like they give you the entire length of the median for each of those. Now, number 8's actually a little different than the way we did it in our notes, so make sure you're following along as we do number 8. I'm actually going to give you the whole diagram for number 8. So we have a triangle like this. Like that one. And there, something like that. I'll just label the important letters for this problem. Alright, so they give us the length of FQ. They're saying that FQ is 4. Now, the problem, I guess it's not really a problem, just the way that this is different from our notes is that in the notes I always gave you the longer of the 2 segments. But on your homework they're giving you the shorter segment. So if the shorter one is 4, what's the length of the longer one? If the shorter one is 4, what's the longer one? 8. Good. In your notes, I was giving you the 8 and you were finding the 4. But on this one, you're given the shorter one and you're finding the longer one. So that is our first answer, right? That's TF. And then they asked for TQ, which would be the entire length of the median. Well, if one shorter part is 4 and the other short part is 8, what's the whole thing? Good, just add them together. Can you guys see enough of that? TF is 8 and TQ is 12. Alright, I'm going to try to sneak number 11 over here. So that's an interesting one. Alright, in number 11, you can read through it on your own. I'll just summarize it for you. There are these 5 towns in New York. And it says that the distance between Greenwich and Altamont is 39. Then they want the distance between Greenwich and the median, which is that long S town I'm not even going to try to pronounce. So, if the whole thing is 39 miles, and I want to find the longer segment, what do I need to multiply it by? The distance from the vertex to the median is always what fraction? 2/3. So let's do 2/3 times that whole distance of 39 miles. That'll give us the distance from our vertex, which they're calling Greenwich, to the median. 26, we're talking about miles, so 26 miles. Alright, so there's one example from each section. Is there any other problem on here that you don't think you can quite get to on your own? We got a few minutes, we can do them together. Number 6 you'd like to see? Alright, I'm going to clear this if you're good. Alright, let's look at number 6 real quick, and then we're probably going to be close to being out of time. On number 6, they give you the entire length of the median. They're saying that it's 18. We want CQ and QD. Which one's longer, CQ or QD? CQ. So CQ is where I'm going to do the 2/3 times 18. QD is where I'm going to do the 1/3 times the 18. Anyone know either of those? $12. You do 2/3 times 18. 2/3 in your calculator is 2, then the ABC button, and then the 3. And then times 18. Yep, that'll give you the longer of the 2 segments. The shorter of the 2 segments, you can either divide that one in half, or you can do 1/3 times 18. Which is? 6. Very good. Alright, I'm going to let you try the rest of them on your own. These are due at the beginning of class tomorrow.